All right, we're well into the bye week here for Rutgers football, and this is my Tuesday episode. Wanted to cover a few things about football, some bowl projections, FPI rankings, projections, for the rest of the season. But first, I also wanted to cover some hoops recruiting news. Also, I did want to come clean and say I made a big mistake in my episode on Monday, which honestly, I'm probably the hardest on myself than anyone. And but in regard to me talking about the injuries and availability and all that, I misrepresented the fact that Flip Dixon did actually see some time in game two. He was limited action. He played 31 snaps per Pro Football Focus. It's funny, Pro Football Focus doesn't register any tackles, but he did get a tackle and a solo per Rutgers. And seeing it, and I had it in my notes that he did play limited. And, sometimes when you have talking points and you discuss various injuries, I recorded that very late at night with my schedule. Sometimes, you'd be surprised when I actually produce this stuff. So I made a boo-boo. He did play. He was limited. He didn't play a ton. It was good, I think, that they weaned him back in, so to speak. But it gives hope that obviously he will be a full go for Virginia Tech in 2 weeks. And he is an instrumental part of the defense. Tyrone Powell and Wesley Bailey, we await. And then, again, Shiano kind of hinting at maybe some other injuries that happened in that Akron game. But my major point remains that we haven't seen this full defense at full capacity. You need all of those guys healthy, and Dixon is obviously one of the most important guys. But I appreciate Greg, who commented to me and was very complimentary in doing so. By the way, when you want to point a mistake out to someone, that's the way to do it. So I am very appreciative of all the listeners and people that watch this on YouTube and listen on Apple and Spotify. And so I'd be remiss not to come clean and say, hey, by the way, I did make a mistake last time. I didn't go back and edit it out. I'm taking it on the chin, and it's only going to make me want to be better. And overall, I will say, I think I covered a lot of good points, but did want to address that. Let's talk about a few things. Bowl projections. I know everyone gets up in arms when you talk about it too early, but it's the bye week. And you know what? There's a lot of publications that are putting them out there. So let's talk about it. In terms of bowl projections for this week, ESPN, both writers projected Rutgers in the Duke Mayo's Bowl. So did CBS Sports, so did Athlon Sports. And then the Action Network, which is Brett McMurphy, projects them in the Quick Lane Bowl. None of this is too exciting. Some of the opponents are exciting. The Quick Lane Bowl, they haven't projected against Toledo. That obviously would not be something that gets people really excited. But in terms of the Duke Mayo Bowl, it's a solid bowl. It's a fun bowl, right? I actually am a Duke's Mayo fan myself. I'm from North Carolina originally, moved to New Jersey when I was 5. But back when you couldn't get Duke's in New Jersey, I bring it home from North Carolina back to New Jersey. Family would bring it. It was a big thing my whole childhood. So it's kind of funny. It's a prominent bowl game now. But at any rate, I know Rutgers fans don't want to hear the Duke Mayo Bowl as the destination. But some of the opponents projected: Louisville, Clemson, Notre Dame, NC State. All of those are pretty interesting and would be a compelling matchup on the face of it. But we all hope that Rutgers does better than that. And I think what's interesting in talking about this is then looking at the FPI projections in terms of rankings. They're kind of all over the place. They're mostly in the 40s to 50s, high 30s by different publications right now. In terms of the actual FPI, which is ESPN, for the Football Power Index, they have Rutgers at 51. Rankings, which I take pretty seriously in terms of analytical, is Bill Connolly's SP Plus rankings, kind of like your Ken Palm. He has Rutgers 38th. And there's some other rankings out there that have them in the 40s. The Athletic has them in the 42, CBS Sports 38. But I really focus on the analytical part. Pro Football Focus has them really high in terms of graded so far, but their strength of schedule is 130th. So it's all with a grain of salt. I'm not saying take any of it too seriously, but it's fun to talk about. But where I think is most interesting to look at is the current FPI projections from ESPN in terms of their projections per game, percentage to win. So in terms of the remaining 10 games, having a 50% or better projection to win the game only exists in 5 remaining games. And under 50%, 5 remaining games. So if you do the math, that's a projection of a 7-5 record. So as we talk about bowl expectations, as we talk about record expectations, this analytical formation, and FPI is, in terms of analytics, I would say it's basic. It's not as good as SP Plus. It's not as good as Pro Football Focus, but it's interesting that that's what they project. Let's go through the schedule. 47.0% chance to win at Virginia Tech. I know some Rutgers fans are feeling more confident for that game. I do think that Virginia Tech is going to give their best in that game. Long way to go before that matchup. We'll see how healthy Virginia Tech is after the road game at Old Dominion and how they perform in that game. Washington, this might surprise some people. FBI projects Rutgers a 46.4% chance to win. Washington, I think, is better than teams people expect. Jed Fish, good coach. A lot of new moving parts on that team, completely different than last year's team. But they are not going to be a walkover by any means, and it's going to be on short rest. For both teams, yes. But that is not a guaranteed win. That is a game before the season. I projected them to win. I projected them to lose at Virginia Tech. I projected them to lose at Nebraska. Nebraska, they have 30.9% chance. Then the home game against Wisconsin. This surprised me, and I get that Wisconsin didn't cover against an FCS team. They do play Alabama this weekend, but they're giving Rutgers a 63.1% chance to win that game. I actually picked them to lose before the season, but that would be obviously a huge win. But if you're going off those 3 projections, those 4 projections in a row, ESPN is saying that Rutgers has a less than 50% chance to win their next 3 games. That is interesting. And then they're saying they have a good chance of beating Wisconsin and UCLA, 69.5% against the Bruins. That is homecoming. And then that road game at USC, 12.6%. I think they have a better chance than that, but it makes sense that that's their biggest, I guess, least likely win on the table. And then Minnesota, 63.3% chance to win. Maryland at Maryland, 35.6%. This is following a loss to the Spartans. And then their last 2 games, a 57.1% chance to Illinois at home and a 54.1% chance at Michigan State, even after they beat Maryland. So, again, does anything mean anything in the grand scheme of things? No, doesn't mean a thing. But it shows that the computer does not think Rutgers is going to go 10-2. So does that necessarily matter? No, it doesn't. But there's a long way to go here. And obviously, as I said in my Monday podcast, we're going to find out so much more about this team against Virginia Tech. And again, it's a great opportunity for a big win. They're going to have a team that's going to give everything they have, that wants revenge on the table. And going back to the offense, can they be multi-dimensional? And also that goes to the play calling. With Shiano, we'll talk about this more. I'm going to have David Anderson on soon, but that also goes for how you call that game, how aggressive you're going to be in that game. Obviously, how the early part of that game goes will dictate some decision-making. But Rutgers has everything on the table that they want right now. It's just interesting that the projections are not overwhelmingly in favor of Rutgers. I said before the season I thought Rutgers would be favored in probably 6, maybe 7 games, which I thought was relevant in terms of how to predict their finished record. I predicted an 8-4 finish, 6-3 Big Ten. So we'll see. These projections are going to change week to week. Obviously, it has to do how your team does and how their future opponents do. So we'll see how all these teams do. I also on Sunday night, I posted a Big Ten review and preview for week 3. So if you didn't listen or watch that, check that out. But I thought that was worth looking at. The bottom line is everything is still out there for Rutgers. They just have to execute. They have to stay healthy. They have to continue to develop as an offense, as a defense, and on special teams. And they have room to grow in all 3. And I think that is an overwhelming positive from where this team was to where they still want to go. And then last note, I did want to touch on Rutgers basketball recruiting. I'm going to do an episode on several visits they have going on in the next month or so, but they did host former 4-star, current 3-star big man Gevonte Ware from North Carolina. Interesting offer list. He previously visited Wake Forest. Gevonte Ware's Final Four, Rutgers, Wake Forest, Duquesne, and DePaul. So he visited this past weekend. Sounds like things went really well. Rutgers has a good shot there. We'll see what happens. But obviously looking for that first commit in the 2025 class. I know some people are concerned. They definitely have some other events. Intriguing prospects lined up. Kelvin Oda is another 4-star that I'll get into in a little bit on another episode. He's scheduled to visit soon. They have some 26 kids scheduled to visit soon. I think things are very different now with the portal versus high school recruiting. And let's be honest, I'm sure a lot of recruits are waiting and seeing how Rutgers performs with Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper. And I just think that basketball recruiting in general is going to be more late in terms of getting recruits committed rather than having 3-4 ready for the early signing period. So we'll see. But if Rutgers can land Gevonte Ware, that would be obviously a good start. Top 150 kid, top 30 center nationally. So certainly an intriguing prospect. And I'll dive more into his potential if and when he does ultimately commit to Rutgers. But there is some recruiting now that, practice is going to begin in a few weeks. We're going to get that Big Ten schedule out soon. It's going to start to ramp up here, and they're going to get a lot of recruits on campus and visits, and there'll be more basketball recruiting news as well. Overall, in terms of Olympic sports, men's soccer had a tough loss to Seton Hall on Monday. Seton Hall is ranked, lost 3-1. And then you have a lot of volleyball action this week. You have field hockey with a big matchup against St. Joe's. And women's soccer they're waiting for Big Ten play. They have a little bit of time off here. But football, we wait for football, and we'll see how the Big Ten does this week. Again, I'll dive more into football later this week with David Anderson. But just in terms of expectations, where people thought they should be at this point, I said on my Monday episode, I think you can't complain where they're at. They obviously have room to grow, but I think it just shows that our expectations might be a little bit higher than outside expectations, despite all the early buzz, trendy picks, all that stuff. But if you can go to Virginia Tech, if you can then come home, beat Washington, you go to October 4-0 with a trip to Nebraska, who could be undefeated as well, and things will really get crazy here in terms of expectations, in terms of buzz, and sky's the limit at that point. So we'll see what happens. Thanks so much for listening and watching once again here at the Scarlet Faithful Podcast.